Okay guys, so today I have a quick video for you on how I think you should play White Forest Azamina in Supreme Darkness format. I'm going to go over the general ideas on the current state of the meta and what that means for the non-engine and the engine in White Forest and Azamina, and then show you some gameplay against Rimitsugi and heroes. So I'm traveling right now, so I'm using my phone mic. Okay, I have a couple major points about the state of the meta right now and what that means for how you should build your deck before you even think about the engine space. First of all, you have to play hand traps, in my opinion. We would prefer a meta where we could just all play breakers and power spells because we play very well into those cards, and we would prefer to play less non-engine spots in our deck because we need to play a lot of engine. But we can't do that because if you have Malice variants and Ryziel variants as the best decks that exist, you can't just go into, for example, a Malice game where the power spell you've drawn is an Eclipse, and now you're looking stupid against a field full of Link monsters. Or you're playing against Ryziel Mitsurugi, and in a multi-card combo deck where you need a bunch of cards to play, you have to discard a card just to be able to resolve your effect. So I think that you have to stop those decks or at least force them into making half boards for you to have a chance at playing into them. And obviously that doesn't just apply for if you are going second after losing the dice roll or after siding. It's also if you're going first, having those hand traps are also layered interactions after you pass turn. So it's not that it's bad to build it that way, it's just that you kind of have to do it now instead of just playing power spell. The second thing is that before Alliance Insight, you cannot compress your engine. When Witches the White Forest, the field spell comes out, that would allow us theoretically to play less engine space in White Forest and have more options for the other engines we play with our deck, because you would have the field spell, you would have Elzet, and you would have Sylvie as three pseudo one-card starters that allow you to do basically any combo or any ladder in the deck, any White Forest combo or ladder. But now having just Elzet and Sylvie as kind of like the main one-ish card combo cards is just not enough for you to cut down on the rest of your engine cards. So I'm currently playing 3 Tails. I think that if you are on almost any other version of this deck, you would never do this because the toys stand in for a card like Tails. I'm also not playing a Stellar for 2 reasons. One, if you're not on toys or something else that makes a Stellar very useful for being a hand trap magnet, it's usually just a bad trade to get hit by anything, and we're currently in a hand trap meta, so it's not worth it. Also, I'm on the Jesse Cotton ratio of normal summons, so there's 3 Sylvie, there's 1 Lacrima, and there's 1 Lurie, so that's 5. Okay, I'm also mixing some power spells, 3 Thrust and 1 Talents, basically the best ones with my hand traps. Black Goat is still good, and I feel like you could play that, but then you would be cutting down on your hand trap ratios, and I think that's very, very risky, and I think you just have to play a lot of hand traps. Okay, also, I'm playing a large Fiendsmith engine because it hasn't been hit yet, really, and the cards are just too good to not play, and the deck is just better with them. If you don't want to play the Fiendsmith cards, I suggest you play another engine and don't just play regular White Forest Azamina. So play Millennium or Toys or something else. You can also play Bestials because Bestials are a really good meta call right now. I don't think I would play a full engine with Lubellion and Regained, because with the Fiendsmith stuff, you don't have to draw it. You can access it through Closed Heaven. With the Lubellion stuff, you do have to draw the Lubellion or like Saronir or something. But Bestials still do complement the engine quite well. They're good bodies, they're good card economy, and they work well against all the Fiendsmith stuff in the meta. Okay, you have to play Dweller in this meta. You do have space for another rank 4 if you don't play Sol, but I personally like Sol because he's part of the playstyle that I like, where I'm breaking boards with Sol and going into Chaos Angel or whatever. This is not a real side deck. Okay, so let me show you some quick gameplay. I will first show you what happens if you are not interacted with, and I'll show you like an actual match against Ryziel Mitsurugi. So here I have kind of like a standard hand. I open the Sylvie, I search for the Tails, and so I basically have like 2 non-engine, and then I have the rest are all my different engines. So that's like a pretty typical hand to draw. Okay, so here I go for the Azet, Arciela. We go into a ladder. I'm not going to talk too much about this because this is uninterrupted, so it doesn't really matter. Like, all this is just fake stuff. Whenever you see people showing you long combos, just remember this is all fake. The only thing that matters is actually playing through interactions, because that's what shows if the deck is good or not. But this will give you an idea of like the direction that the deck is supposed to head into. And then when I show you the gameplay, you'll see, maybe like how you should go about trying to achieve those boards when you're being interacted with. Here I draw into a tract off of a Russia draw, and honestly, like that's not even super lucky really, because I'm playing a huge Fiendsmith engine like triple engraver, double tract, Lacrima Luri. So drawing a couple more cards after your starting hand is pretty likely that you would get into something like that. So here your typical, like the typical board you're going to end on is obviously Diabel. The Wave Hiking Caesar I think is much better than Desiree, because even if you could compare them as boss monsters and say they're roughly similar, the Desiree requires that you shuffle back off of sequence your materials engrave, but the Wave Hiking allows you to keep the Requiem and the Lacrima. So you can cycle your entire Fiendsmith engine every single turn, and so you have an additional push every single turn, and that is just simply like too good to pass up. Also, if you're playing into Bestials, these are other targets for the Bestials to focus on so that your White Forest stuff can resolve. So I just think that the Wave Hiking Caesar is just way better than the Desiree right now. Then you have the Ilia Sylvia. Here you have the rank 4, which happens to be a Dweller. You have the Tunon engine in hand, which are double nibs. And then you have, usually your Tails, which is your add back. So, okay, you know that I'm not reading any of this stuff, right? So anyhow, just activate your stuff, and I'm going to use Wave Hiking Caesar first, always. Save my Omni Negate for whatever. I have the Afe set for whatever, and then he scoops. Okay, so that's what the deck is supposed to do. Now let's show you against Rizeal Mitsurugi. So he wins the dice roll. And my hand is awkward because I only have Engraver as my engine, and this doesn't get me into the White Forest stuff. So I don't actually want to use my hand traps. I want to use the bare minimum hand traps so that, because this game might become a grind, or I just may need as many hand traps as possible to survive while waiting for my White Forest stuff. So I'm hoping to droll and not use anything else, or use only one other thing so that I can like survive longer. Now somehow this guy only passes on one detonator, which I don't know how that's possible. Well, I mean, I guess droll is actually way better against the Mitsurugi variant. So I guess, maybe that's, fair. Maybe he actually does have nothing else to do. So I draw Sylvie for turn, and just in case, because, I know I have to start with an Imperm, right? Before I put a monster on board. I'm like, what if he does something to this Engraver? What if he ashes there and I could Talents, maybe I could Talents take his detonator. And then I would still have, a discard off the ladder with my Sylvie and stuff. But obviously he does nothing, so I'm like, okay, I have to activate Imperm. For some reason, he chains Detonator and pops his own Detonator. Why? That just plays into Talents and Thrust, and he doesn't gain anything from this. There's no twins in the grave, there's nothing like that. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to Talents, and I'm going to look at your hand. And he uses the Meows thing. I see, where is it? This is kind of awkward to use on your phone. I think he had Sword, he had some Mitsurugi card, and he had Node. And I think I put back the Sword. But he uses the Meows, and I can't not play into this a little bit because I want to go for the Fiendsmith line. So here he gets a draw, and really the only thing I'm particularly afraid of is Nib at this moment. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to play greedily. Because I want to use the Requiem as fodder for my my LZ. And so I play a little bit greedily here, and I do that. And I'm like, you know what? He's not going to draw into the Nib. The reason that I'm saying this is not because you should do this. I'm explaining the thought process so that you know what's good and what's not good. Okay, here I choose to add back the Imperm over the Tails, because I feel like if he's not hand trapping me, it means that he has engine, and that means that I need more stuff to interact with his engine. So instead of having a Tails, which would be, good for my engine, I want an Imperm to have an additional layer to stop his engine from working. Because we know that he has the Mitsurugi ritual thing, and he has a Rizeal card. So I want to be able to interact with like the other piece, the missing piece he draws, to be able to play properly. Okay, and I know that he's going to get more draws because of the Meows. So here I bring out the Engraver, and he gets another draw. So I go Sequence because I've already used the Requiem, so I can't go into Wave Hiking, which I would have preferred. And so now I'm basically setting up like a pretty good board here, because I can also get the Murcielago, and 99% of the time I will always Murcielago for Aface instead of Ilia Sylvia, because the Aface I find is better than an Omni Negate because you also get to keep the Murcielago body for whatever else you want to do, like making a closed heaven or whatever. In this case, because I guess he could be drawing into Nib, maybe it was wrong to go Murcielago for Aphase, and maybe it was better to make Ilia Sylvia, because now he could be, holding a Nib for something. That said, if he did have Nib and he was worried about the Ilia Sylvia, he would probably have nibbed on the activation of Hallowed. And if he doesn't, maybe it's fine for me to go for the Athase. So it's just, some of the thought process there. Okay, anyhow. So I get the draw into an Engraver, and I go battle phase, but I can actually attack for game here because I have the Sylvie Engrave, and so I can just, keep attacking there. So, okay. Now going on to game 2. So he's going first. I unfortunately have double Ash. So my hand is very, very fragile. I Ash his Duo Drive, and that is really like the bare minimum, because I would have wanted one more, like an Imperm or something. The way that he played is kind of weird, because I feel like if you only end on one Detonator, what this tells me is that he probably drew one of the Mitsurugi cards that can't do anything by itself, and he was Dugarising to draw 2, hoping to draw into the other piece so that he could do the Mitsurugi play, but he didn't get to it, and so now all he has is a Detonator. But now my hand is awkward, because not only did I draw 2 Ashes, I've also drawn 2 Tails. So I Engraver, he Ashes, which usually you want that. You want to bait the Ash Air. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, I have the normal Sylvie, even if I no effect Sylvie so he doesn't Detonator it, so I still have a Spellcaster on field to use the Tails. If I activate Tails, he'll just pop the Sylvie then, So I realized that I don't actually have a way to play around this Detonator. So I summon the Sylvie and he Judgments it, which is crazy. Like, there's no way that's correct. But anyhow, there's nothing I can do, so I lose. Okay, so game 3 against Ryziel Mitsurugi. So I have a very weird hand, because I have double Wanted. I have a D-Barrier that I sighted in. I have an Aphase, and I have a Witch. So I've drawn 2 1-ofs, which is, whatever, it happens. But I don't really have a way to play. I have a really strong non-engine, but I don't really have a way to play. So what I do is I pitch the other Wanted to summon the Witch. And what I'm thinking is I'm going to go for a closed heaven line, and at some point in that line, I'm going to tribute, for example, like a sequence, maybe because I'm going to make Desiree, to get the Hallowed, and then I'll have sequence plus, like another body, like an Ilia Sylvia or whatever. So I activate the Deception here, and I tribute the Azet, and he Ashes it. So now I don't have another body to go into the closed heaven. But it didn't really, like, if I tributed the Witch and he were to Ash that instead, the Azet does less. Whereas if the Witch sticks, then in his turn, if it's sent, I at least will get a search off of the Witch and be able to bring the Witch back. So it's a little bit safer to keep the Witch than to keep the Azet. So yeah, because this is post-sighting, I keep the Aphase in hand, even though I feel like I'm probably going to lose here, and I just set the D-Barrier, because if he's drawn like a low-roll hand where he can only play Rituals or only play XYZ, the D-Barrier obviously beats that. If he can play both, then there's no way for me to win. So here he summons the Sagi, he goes for the prayers, and here he activates the prayers. So my thought process here is my board is so pathetic that he has to have drawn poorly, otherwise I lose. So if he's drawn poorly, obviously I'm going to debarrier the first thing, Ritual or XYZ, that he tries to do. So he tries to Ritual first, so I call Ritual, praying that he doesn't have an XYZ play. And it turns out that he does not have an XYZ play. So he passes turn, and in my draw phase, he turns on my Thrust. So now I have like a decision to make, because I have to choose whether to Deception first or to Thrust first, thinking that he may interact with this in some way, right? Like, for example, you can Ash it. And if I Deception first, I'll have to tribute my Witch's cost. So if I lose the Witch and he Ashes that, Thrusting for Tails doesn't do anything, because I would have lost the Spellcaster on field to make the Tails live. So I realized that I actually have to Thrust first to check for the Ash, and then continue playing off the Deception. So he Ashes the Thrust, I tribute the Witch, get the Hallowed, I bring out the Sol, and I make a huge mistake here. A tremendous mistake of that cost me, it potentially could cost me the game. The mistake is that I go battle phase. So if you look at the state of the board right now, right? I have a single Sol on field, and I have an Aface in hand, which would give me 1 bounce. This guy has 6 cards in hand, which will be 7 on his draw. What I should have done is I should have done the wanted draw. So I can Hallowed, put back Azet to put Hallowed in hand. Okay, that doesn't do anything. But I can wanted draw, and I can see, because now I have enough cards. I have an Aface in hand to where, like, basically any White Forest card, you know, like if I were to draw an LZ, would be crazy. So I don't know why I go battle phase here. I think I had just accepted the end. I go battle phase, I attack. I go main phase 2, I add back the Hallowed. I do the wanted draw, I put back Deception, and now I draw Tails. And I have an illusion monster on field. Why did I not do this before? Because this means if he has no hand traps, and now he has all gas, like he's about to blow me out next turn, I'm just going to full board. I'm going to full board through this single Tails. So I Tails here. He's already used Ash, right? So I know he can't Ash the Tails. I go for LZ. He can't Ash the LZ. I send the Aface, which is going to reset itself. Here I normal summon the Sylvie. So now this is the check for like Valor Imperm. If he has Valor Imperm, he basically has, well, he probably is going to Valor Imperm the Sylvie, because I can't stop it, right? And then if he does that, I can still go into an Arciela, and I could send the Hallowed that isn't doing anything right now and keep the Aface on field. And that can get me into the Azet. So now I'm feeling safe, right? I'm feeling like I have ways to play around interactions at this point, because he can't use the Ash, because he Ashed already in my turn. So I search for Scourge, because this is post-side, remember. I Arciela, send the Scourge, get the Azet. Scourge comes back, Azet brings itself out, and remember, I've already gone through a D barrier, so I can get back the D barrier. I have wanted, so I wanted for Witch. I send the wanted off of Hallowed. I bring out the Ilia Sylvia because I already have Aface. Otherwise, I would have gone for the Murcielago. I bring out the Sylvie because I want another body to do a closed heaven play. So I Witch because I didn't use Witch. I put the Deception on field. I go for the Requiem. Lacrima, fuel the grave with the Engraver. I go Necroquip. I go Engraver. I go Wave Hiking Caesar. And I go in phase. So I have the Omni-Negate and Ilia Sylvia. I have the Diabel. I have the Wave Hiking Caesar. I have the Aface. I have the D-Barrier. Okay, I have the Scourge. I have the Deception. And I have the Requiem, Lacrima follow-up cycle. I have LZ Engrave. If I lose this game, I'll never play Yu-Gi-Oh! For the rest of my life. But also, I should have quit anyhow because I did all this after battle phase instead of just doing it in main phase 1 and attacking for game. So, anyhow, now he plays. I Wave High King the Ritual. He talents. Obviously, I Scourge because the Scourge can only negate the face-up stuff and the Ilia Sylvia can negate whatever. So I'm obviously going to use the Scourge here because it's more appropriate on the talents. He goes Node and he goes Star Slayer, which tells me that he actually doesn't have gas, but he also doesn't have hand traps. So I'm like, what is in this guy's deck? Anyhow, I'm not going to wait for him to try to bounce a monster so that I have to waste my Ilia Sylvia. I'm going to Aface so that I keep all of my monsters on field. I bounce that, and then he scoops. So, okay. Right now, I think just to like go over my final thoughts is you have to play hand traps. You could include Bestials in that. I think that playing more Tails, playing in general like higher engine counts for White Forest stuff, you just have to do before Alliance Insight because we don't have the field spell so that we can compress our engine ratios a little bit and play more non-engine or more other engines. You can mix power spells with hand traps. I think you have to play Droll. Obviously, you have to play Valor because it's searchable. Imperm is a trap, which automatically makes it better than every other hand trap in our deck for us because worst case scenario, it acts as fodder. I think the Fiendsmith stuff is probably the best. You have to play Dweller. There are some flex spots like the Sol and I think maybe just the Sol. Yeah. So anyhow, that's my brief showcase of Supreme Darkness White Forest stuff. When I have more time, I'll make more videos. And also, I'm going to be doing a DB tournament for White Forest variants in Supreme Darkness format and also Alliance Insight format. So if you're interested in any of that, join the Discord so that you know when I'm about to start that. Okay, thanks for watching.